you. So item D2, which is related to Somerset Academy, it's DRC-24-050049. You could set up, please, for presentation. There we go. Here we are.
Morning.
Perfect.
This mic is on. Hugo Arza, 701 Brickell Avenue, representing the applicant. I chose, if all of you don't mind, I know that there's some folks on the other side that are here to listen to this particular presentation, so I didn't want to give my back to them. So I hope you don't mind me being on this side, but pleasure to be before all of you. I'm joined today by my colleague, Erica Adam, as well as a representative from the school in case any questions come up that require that. Unlike the presentations you just heard, we're not proposing a single new building or absolutely anything to the physical structure. So this is an existing site. So I think the level of detail that I just heard with respect to the project that you all just heard was quite impressive, but there's nothing new. There isn't a single brick or anything else being proposed for this project. This is an existing site. If we could go to the next slide, I think Erica's, yeah. A little over 2.5 acre site, 624 Anastasia, just on the west side of Segovia. Existing University Baptist Church, operates as a church, has church functions and church services on weekends and select evenings and the like. They've been there for many, many years. Somerset School's been there for approximately 12 years now. So the school itself has now a long history and a long period of time there at this location. Next slide. We obviously are maintaining our current use. We're not seeking any kind of change. In fact, I kind of glossed over it, but on the first page, I mean, it's an amendment to a conditional use permit, which has an enrollment cap. And really, this is all about that. We'll get to that in a second. And site plan approval to the extent that we obviously, with respect to the parking, queuing operations, pickup and drop off, must address any enrollment increase. So site plan approval and conditional use permit for that reason, but not seeking any kind of rezoning change of any type. And the improvements that exist there today will remain there. Again, religious facilities and schools and the like. Next slide, please. A little bit about Somerset, award-winning school in Coral Gables. It's a school with a geographic preference enrollment for Coral Gables residents, populated with many Coral Gables children, the children of Coral Gables residents. A grade A school. Current enrollment is at 260, which is the 2012 resolution cap. The proposed request is for 700 students, and I would highlight by way of the need, although I think it speaks to some things, although again, I think traffic and other issues are more nuts and bolts, but the need is that we have nearly 1,000 children on the wait list. In some cases, siblings who are unable to attend because there's no capacity for them. And so parents are driving to two schools and the nature. So, when you've got an award-winning school with a density cap and you've got a community that continues to grow, and, you're looking at a project over here with, I think, 78 more units. I mean, Coral Gables has changed radically in the last dozen years. I had a brief conversation with one of the neighbors before this, and they commented that nothing has changed. And that's the one thing I told them: we would remain with an open mind and sit down and talk to them. But the idea that nothing has changed in the last 12 years is hard to believe. All of this has changed in the last 12 years. The entire surroundings of where we are, the buildings, the residential buildings, all of that. So a lot has changed. Some of that is borne out in our wait list, which is the need for what we're proposing. Next slide. So again, currently approved for the 260 students. The building itself, the capacity from a life safety standpoint and the like far exceeds 1,000. I mean, again, we get sometimes questions. I mean, this is I think it's 65,000 square foot building. Correct. Main building area is 65, and actually with additional office area, 68,000 square foot building. So, and that's in the site plan that we've proposed. So, it's a large building. So again, in terms of the classroom size and what's needed, there's ample size inside the building for what we would propose. The color-coded graph, which is the parking field, which exists today, and it is a large parking field. As you can see, it takes up, probably about a third of the entire 2.6 acres, all of that parking, and it's color coded here to give a sense of how and the breakdown of how parking would be utilized. And so we have submitted that to, you've had that since we filed our application. We look forward to discussing further with you. I keep mentioning the fact that traffic will be, fundamental. We had the initial conversations with your staff with respect to traffic and methodology and went through that process. We were unable to get to the point where we could have the city's traffic engineer engaged in time to collect data prior to the end of the school year. You just don't typically collect the last couple of weeks or the first couple of weeks of any school year because of the variation in activities, graduations, awards ceremony. I've got 3 children. I've been to half a dozen events in the last 2 weeks. So and I had this conversation with Mr. Gibbs, who represents some of the neighbors. We are going to have to wait until September to collect data. So we appreciate and understand that this is not a process that's going to move forward to planning and zoning, next month or the month after. I mean, we've got to get to that point, collect the data, have your staff analyze that data, react to that, answer the questions that are needed, and then go ahead and then take the subsequent public hearing processes. So, I say that as much for the neighbors who are here in attendance today as I do for those of you sitting there in your professional capacity. We understand that this will take a little bit of time, and we look forward to working with all of you to address those concerns. Next slide. And again, purpose of the amendment is the increase in student enrollment. Next slide. And I believe that might, again, in light of the very extensive set of comments that you had for proposed construction and buildings, in terms of your DRC review criteria, there are a number of things where this is existing and we're not adding anything. So again, whether it's, engineering or construction, architecture, historic preservation, I mean, these are issues. I mean, we're not proposing anything. We're not historically designated in a way. Traffic and pedestrian circulation and zoning, where our site does exceed the parking requirements. We have excess parking from what's needed, and that's outlined in our site plan. But, just I guess, if nothing else, just focus us on the fact that it will require traffic analysis, and we look forward to working with the city. Next. In talking a little bit about that, just as a reminder, the queuing operations design occurs entirely inside the property, meaning the pickup and drop off entirely inside the property. That doesn't mean that people don't drive on the streets to access it. I mean, let's be clear, you can't teleport and be dropped into the parking lot and then teleport back out. Of course, you have to drive to get there. But the queuing, the pickup and the drop off, the exiting of a child from a car, the entering of a child into the car, all of those occur on site, and we have an ample parking field for that. And we will be able to show that we can accommodate the projected increase. We threw it in there too, deliveries, other functions. Those are also things that we intend to, keep on site as they operate today. Next slide. In terms of mitigating the potential traffic concerns, we do have some ideas, even though the studies haven't been done, because I myself have probably worked on, 80 to 100 school applications across South Florida. So I've just had to kind of roll my sleeves up and do quite a bit of that. The architects that help us plan this out, I've worked on probably 300 to 400 of those. And obviously Somerset operates a number of schools. So we have a breadth of experience. And so, we are proposing further staggering of the pickup and dismissal periods. I mean, we'll get into that in terms of the traffic study, but, it's not intended that it'll all occur, at the same time. We would not have or propose to have 700 kids starting or entering at the same time. I will note for the record, because I cannot contain myself, my children attend traditional public schools, not charter schools, and not one of them attends a school that has staggered anything. And they go to schools with 1,800 and 2,500 and 3,000 students in the case of my high schooler. So the concept of the staggered pickups and drop-offs is one that is required of charter schools, despite the fact that they are public schools. But many of the schools in our community, and I would venture to guess that all of the traditional public schools in your city don't have to abide or do anything like that. But we understand that it helps with traffic, and we are prepared to do it. After school care and activities, we look forward to working with you to show you children don't tend to finish at 2:20 or 2:15 or 2:30, and all of them leave. There are after school activities. And so there is a difference in the impacts of traffic in the afternoon as there is in the morning. They do tend to get dropped off within a period of time in the morning that's more compressed. But in the afternoon, we have learned that we need to show that, and that's important to try and give a full narrative. Proximity of the student body, siblings, the opportunity for students to walk or bike. We look forward to that. I think we have received a comment at some point, I think from from Ms. Garcia or your team or someone about, enhancing some of the pedestrian connectivity. I do recall that from that we might have had maybe in initial conversations, and we're certainly open to any of those suggestions. But to the extent that you can take a child from being driven to being walked to school, I think it's a victory. And obviously siblings, it's one car, mom or dad drops off a couple of kids, not two separate families dropping off their children. You can cut it. There are siblings on the wait list. There are siblings that attend this school. Many families have more than one child. So we look forward to explaining how all of that is. And then the active management of traffic. Again, staff, traffic control officers, if necessary, being on site to manage traffic is critical. And we understand how to do that. Somerset understands how to do that, not just at this location, but they do it throughout all of their locations. And so we look forward. So those are some of the things. And, here are some of the proposed times, the sort of the 3 shifts, 7 to 7:30, 7:30 to 8, and 8 to 8:30, with the division of the number of students. And as you can see, no one of those periods exceeds the 260 that you have today. So in fact, you are talking about having, comparable impacts over different staggered periods, but not exponentially greater impacts over one smaller period, if that makes sense. And all of this, the data behind this, the queuing lengths and the analysis will be, we're confident, because we work on a lot of these, we're confident that the traffic studies will ultimately show all of that, but we'll work with your staff when that happens and comes out. Next slide. So, that's really it. I want to thank you, for your time and anticipation of your questions. I want to thank you for your thoughtfulness in providing comments to us. I will assure the city, for the benefits of those that are sitting here today and those that might be listening, that we're very familiar with Mr. Gibbs. I myself am very familiar with Mr. Gibbs and have worked with him on many, many projects. He represents a group of neighbors. I took the opportunity to introduce myself to one of the neighbors. I hope to catch a couple more or all of them after this meeting. Our door is open. We will have a conversation with them. This is not the first time that we have had neighbors or an adjacent business or someone express concerns, and knock on wood. We're pretty good at finding some common ground, at least when I'm involved in projects, which I was not 12 years ago. So I look forward to working with them, and I wanted everyone here to know that we would certainly take their thoughts into consideration, even though this is not a public meeting and they won't be speaking here today. We've read the emails they've sent, and we certainly will, through their counsel, since they're represented, be looking to meet with them and talk to them at length over the time that we have, which again, will be a little bit of time since we can't collect data till September. So thank you all so much for your time, and look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned neighbors and their concerns. Is there a reason why you haven't met with any of the neighbors before this meeting?
No, I want, well, first of all, to be candid with you, because I had heard Mr. Gibbs was representing them, but I did not know that, nor had they informed me of that. And I think Mr. Gibbs will nod in acknowledgement that we tend not to reach out when we know folks are represented by counsel. And I spoke with Tucker about that, because they're represented by counsel. And so rather than reaching out directly as a lawyer, my clients to clients can speak, but lawyers, once you know someone is represented by counsel, should not reach out directly. So I, in an abundance of caution, figured I would see everybody this morning. Secondly, because without a traffic study yet, and knowing that this process is going to take several months, we just figured we'd get your comments, use this as an opportunity to meet them and work through the comments over the next few months. To be honest, we weren't, without the traffic study, what were we going to show them and what were they going to tell us, other than that they have concerns and that we think that it works? I think we all kind of knew.
Yeah, it would just be ideal if you have someone in agreement with the neighbors that you would meet with them at least to give them a heads up and try and find some common ground before going through the process publicly.
Yeah, appreciate the sentiment, but I have found in 25 years of doing this that, you usually got to go through the process. So I'll just leave it at that. And I think Mr. Gibbs understands what I'm saying. It's very hard to agree before anybody weighs in on anything, including city staff or anybody else, for the parties to reach an agreement. You usually got to kind of start the process, but point is taken.
Okay, thank you. So, zoning, any comments?
Good morning, Arceli Redila, zoning administrator. So I just want to ask it again. How many students do you have?
260.
That's the maximum.
We are at the maximum current enrollment, correct?
Is there any virtual population, virtual class?
Do you have any virtual? No, we don't have any virtual.
So these 260 are all in the school?
That's 260 physical students, correct?
So how is So how is the existing condition right now with 260 students with regards to traffic circulation and all those queuing and pickup? Is there any problem?
We don't believe there is. I mean, we've got parents, we've got a wait list. Folks don't tend to gravitate towards places where they're going to have problems.
No, the operation with
No, I
regards to
understand.
the
I
operation.
said, we don't believe there is, and I was giving the reason. We manage our operations aggressively, actively with staff out there, and we are able to move, the parents and the cars through in an expeditious fashion. We don't believe there's any issue with our current operations.
Okay, so that's 260 right now. The request is for 700 students. That's 440 increase. Does that mean 440 cars?
No, it doesn't. That's a great question. You'll find that out with the traffic study. I'm going to have to give that answer several times because I'm not a traffic engineer and there's no traffic study before you yet. But that's one of the conversations about the siblings that we were talking about. I mean, we have, and we'll have the ability to show that there are instances in which you have siblings coming in one car where there's multiple folks. So no, it does not mean that it's a 1-for-1 increase, and the traffic engineers will explain how they arrive at the figures that they arrive.
So there's also an increase in staff of 22 staff.
Correct.
Right?
Which becomes fundamentally, it becomes more of a parking concern in the sense that those are folks that only drive in, and stay there, right? So you have one in, but you don't have an out, and then, they leave in the afternoon at some point. We do have ample parking. Our site plan shows the additional staff parking we would set aside.
So I know that there's no change in the building. There's
Correct.
no change in site plan. There's no change in queuing, nothing, right?
Correct.
So as I've read it all over that, the building is underutilized. Yeah, we understand that. But the site itself,
Mhm.
is it good right now with the 260? Like, it may be underutilized, but the traffic, you're increasing the number of students. That increase in student enrollments will result in the number of vehicles that will be going in and out.
Sure.
In that area. How is
Sure.
that being addressed with no change in the site plan at all?
That's where I spoke about having the multiple shifts so that you're not, we're not trying to put 700 kids all to move through and get picked up and drop off at the same time. We're going to do it over the staggering that we showed. So in fact, the same queuing area, physical queuing area, parking area, and the like will be utilized at, for multiple shifts of pickups and drop-offs. That's how we traditionally deal with the fact that while you may not be adding queuing, to your point, the building, when we say it's underutilized, we mean the building is much larger, can accommodate more classrooms. But that is still has to jive with the amount of space you have outside to get children safely in and out of the site. And so by providing for multiple pickup and drop-off times and evaluating the impacts of any of those, you'll be able to determine, okay, there's an impact now, and then they flow through, and then there'll be another impact for the next cohort. And, we gave you kind of an initial stab at what that staggering would look like, which roughly speaking ends up being about 200 to 250 per each of those shifts. So none of those exceed what it is today, right? So so we basically expand the opportunities for pickup and drop off.
So right now, how many shifts do you have with regards to pick up and drop off?
Right.
Uh-huh. What's the span of time?
The morning is half hour,
Uh-huh.
and yeah.
Half an hour each or half an hour total?
Half an hour. So,
So it's-
What time? What time in the morning?
school is at 7,
Uh-huh.
then they're late at 8, the little ones. And then the next group is late at 8, third group is 8. So we have an hour and a half of drop off in the morning. So imagine 260 kids, you don't even notice it's 90 minutes of kids getting dropped off. And then in the afternoon, we do 2, 2:30, and 3. So in the afternoon, it's about an hour, it's also an hour and a half.
So with these 440 students, how many additional shifts are you adding?
One.
We're going to add one more shift in the morning. We'll make sure we have 3 shifts in the morning, and then we'll stagger them over the 3 existing shifts in the afternoon, which we're confident. With all due respect, I mean, you have no evidence of problems yet because you have no traffic study. So, I mean, I think we're sort of loading.
No, I'm just,
Right.
I'm just basing.
Right, I get it, but so we believe that it will work in the shifts that it has. I mean, right now, if you have 2 shifts and 100, you're talking about dropping off, to our school representative's point, Lisa's point, like over an hour and a half, 260 kids. We're talking about dropping off like all of those kids in a structured format over the same hour and a half, or perhaps an hour and 45 minutes in the morning. And again, we have 3 shifts in the afternoon for convenience for parents and the like. But you're dividing 260 by 3. We think we can divide 700 by 3 because the queuing analysis will show that we can accommodate those cars. I mean, I have seen drone footage and videos and time-lapse videos, and the cars come in and are inside. I mean, there is capacity, but with all due respect, I mean, like, we don't have the data. Your questions are valid and excellent, but I can't give you data to support what we know and believe. I mean, perhaps we should have had DRC later on. I mean, I guess, but I look forward to other comments. But on the traffic front, I mean, I'm happy to keep answering the questions like that. But I mean, we believe the data will show that the shifts that we are proposing will accommodate the impact.
The question will all be about that because
Of course,
there's no other change, right? The
I
question
agree,
will about site capacity.
which is
So
why
now-
I showed you on the DRC.
Yeah, so now so you have buses picking up and dropping
Do
off?
we have any buses? Yeah, no, there's not a robust, over time, bus use has dropped radically, just culturally, there are just many fewer buses in use for school kids. You'll see a lot of them because they use them for field trips and the like. But I mean, in terms of the daily pickup and drop off, I've experienced, again, from working.
Oh, so it's really like parents picking up and dropping
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
There is no collective bus.
No.
That,
Now, the public sentiment isn't there. Parents don't, for many reasons, safety and others, parents just opt. Any of you that are parents, I can appreciate it. I am. Sometimes you just feel, let me take my child to school. I don't want to. So yeah, that's kind of, but that's societally. I mean, it's all schools have seen over the last 20, 25 years, a great reduction in bus use. That's just, we've learned that.
so of the current population, since this has been mentioned, how many of your 260 students or of these 700 students live in the neighborhood within walking distance?
So all live within a mile, right? Our enrollment preference is a mile.
Right now, with your 260 students, how many live within walking?
Yeah, I'd have to see, I don't have off the top of my head how many, we can plot map that and provide that data.
I think that would be a very important
Yeah. Sure.
part of your supporting document.
Sure.
I want to see of your 260 students right now, how many live in the neighborhood within walking distance?
Ye-
How many live in Coral Gables?
Yeah.
So that we can at least anticipate, because if you're saying that they are walking.
Yeah, yeah, and the wait list. So
No,
here's,
the current.
right, and that's,
And the
I-
wait list.
let me-
if we Go to the.
yeah, let me, absolutely. And again, you're gonna get tired of me saying this. I should put it on repeat. In the traffic study, they will have to model and show the walkers that we have today. We will make sure that traffic study, you're engineers, we will make sure that they have the data to see who walks today so that they can accurately model the impacts. Because it wouldn't be fair in either direction. If 260 kids walk, there's 0 traffic impact. That's an extreme that doesn't exist. But 260 kids all get driven is the other extreme. We will provide that data. And that's why in these instances where cities have chosen to select the traffic engineer, it's imperative that the applicant and the engineers work closely together, because we have data that they need from us. It's
Yeah.
not just about collecting on the street, it's about operations.
Yeah, so
Provide.
in addition to that,
Yeah.
since you have the data of your
Yeah.
students, right? So how many live in the neighborhood within walking distance?
Okay.
How many live in Coral Gables? How many are siblings? Since
We'll provide all of that.
how many are carpooling?
Perfect.
Maybe they're neighbors. So
Sure.
that mapping out where the students live could help a lot with that analysis.
Of course.
In
No,
addition to the traffic study.
we're writing those notes down, and we will provide all of that data to the traffic engineer so that they can model it correctly. Again, on a personal note, one of my 3 kids is in a carpool, 4 families. Everybody's got an SUV. So, 4 kids get dropped off at one school together from 3 different families because one of them has a sibling. So carpooling is a real thing, walking, and obviously siblings and the same family going. We'll provide all that data.
So it needs to be a breakdown of,
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll provide all of that data, I promise.
Okay, so that's it for me.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
It's the architect.
So I've been listening to this discussion and I don't understand why we're here today if there isn't a traffic study and this is all about traffic. You're not changing the building, you're
Yeah.
not changing the site, you're not doing any exterior work.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what is the benefit?
We show up where we're told to be. I mean, we were
I'm asking a
rhetorical, right?
I am requesting additional students to a school which is gonna generate a traffic study. And I'm going to a meeting without a traffic study, so
I-
what's the benefit of going to the meeting?
I
Where are we doing here today?
I appreciate, I mean, if to the extent that there are other, I mean, I take, I take to heart the comments we've heard about making sure that the traffic study and that the data is provided. So maybe that's one benefit. But I was very clear, you seem skeptical. I was very clear, during my presentation, and I think in every answer I've given so far, that we agree. I mean, the traffic study is fundamental. We filed this application. By the time that the process works, you're scheduled for a DRC, but we have to contract and you all propose an engineer. We ran out of time to collect because we're at the end of the school year and you don't collect in those last couple of weeks when you have such. So we just ran out of time. And I guess in hindsight, should we have waited to have the DRC? That's a decision for for you all to make in the future, but we're here now. I guess there's nothing else I can say except we showed up when we were told to be,
Okay, so I understand that. My next question is there any possibility of a concurrent use with the church space and the school functions during the daytime?
Utilizing some of their space?
No. Is there activities that are planned for the church space?
No, they have offices that they do operate some of their offices during the day, administrative, the church is open.
Sanctuary?
No, correct. There's no overlap and they have their own parking designated in the parking lot for their staffers, for the folks that work at the church who are going to come in the morning and leave in the afternoon because it's their job, not because they're coming to the school.
And is that a condition stated somewhere that cannot happen or?
You have a lot of conditions from 2012.
Yeah, they have a covenant as well.
That says that there's no concurrent use of the sanctuary with the school function during the daytime? Because that would generate a huge amount of traffic. And so that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, the 2012 approval has, I have a.
Again, that's just food for thought. You don't have to look for.
Yeah, no, I'm looking to see. I mean, I appreciate it. I don't think in practice we have that issue, but we certainly could consider, we're modifying that approval, so we could consider. Yeah, no, thank you. No, yeah.
The next question I have, is there ever a conflict? Again, this is a large campus. It's a big building that generates trash, and I know there's trash pickup. I know trash pickup usually occurs in the morning.
Mhm.
Is there ever a scenario where trash conflicts with drop off, pickup?
Well,
Has that been?
yeah, no, when you operate a school, that's one of the things, you make sure that the pickup, yeah, we don't come to,
I guess Public Works will.
yeah, they can speak to it, but we don't, no, I get it. If a trash truck,
I see it every morning in my neighborhood, the trucks are in the middle of the street, people are trying to get to work.
yeah.
And there's conflict, so.
Well, again, a truck driving on Anastasia is a different story. There may be a truck inside. Yes, no, our pickups and drop offs and the school's deliveries are never going to be scheduled between pickup and drop off times because that's for the parents to come in and drive. Like
And then the last question I have, or the last issue I saw, is your parking lot has 94 spaces physically there,
Mhm.
and you've only got 3 handicaps, and you may have an issue with the handicap code, you're required 4 spaces.
Okay.
That's just
We're over by 20 spaces. We can restripe and make sure that we provide that. And this is existing. And so perhaps we need to update it. Okay.
grandfathered in, but again, if you guys are making modifications and you're bringing things up to date, you may want to.
I would imagine that won't be any issue. We'll take that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Parks and Rec.
Hey, thank you. Can you tell me what the plans are for your open space? Because with 260, you already had a demonstrated need for PE and after school, because we were approached to help for facilities. So what are you going to do?
Yeah,
with
we
700?
have, we have some, internal, areas that we recreate. Recreation and PE has changed a lot from when we went to school, in terms of, and I can tell you that again from my children and from experience and how they do their PE. My high schooler took virtual PE. That's how she got her credit. So again, in a change to, society, we do, provide for the opportunities for them to do PE and meet their PE credit. Charter schools do not have an open space requirement. State law does not impose that. So we do not have to set aside from a legal framework a certain number of square feet per students. State law speaks to that already. So yeah, it's not uncommon. I'm working with a Somerset school in Homestead where they've reached an agreement with a city park to utilize it for the baseball. That is a very common occurrence in the school world. I will note and remind everyone though that there is a condition from 2012 that we don't use the youth center. So despite the proximity, there is a longstanding condition.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because I was unaware of that
Okay.
settlement and I was approached and we were actually working on an agreement
Good enough.
for them to use,
Yeah.
well,
I'm certainly not going to tell them to violate any of their
no,
conditions.
I'm not, we can, there's, documentation on it, but in any case, the reason why we were approached is because there was already a perceived dissatisfaction with what you had or whatever, just for 260 students. So that's my concern. I think that's
Yeah.
something you have to look at because you're going up to 700. You already have parents that don't like wherever your facilities are, which is what I heard. And then you have issues where you need availability for after school. Now, instead of having maybe a couple of flag football teams, now you got 700 kids. You can have a bunch of sports.
Yeah.
I think that's a big concern. So
Well,
I think that's
well-
something you have to look at.
We'll work, maybe it's time for us to be a little bit more, certainly in an enrollment context to talk a little bit more holistically about how we provide that.
Okay.
To the extent that there are parents concerned, and there are, there's also 900 parents that want to get their kid into there. So, there's a give and take, right? And folks trade off a lot of times, my kid's not going to have as big of a PE field, but I really like the school, or vice versa. My child really needs the field. So, but I think it is an opportunity for us now to kind of look holistically at what the PE needs collectively are and work with whatever resources, we may have and the city may have, and that the city's own residents are paying for as residents of the city, and they're sending their children here. But yeah, no, we'll work on that. We might reach out to you to kind of understand how that works a little better.
Thank you. Public Works.
Dina Bell Llewellyn, Assistant Public Works Director for Green Space.
Morning.
So good morning. With this site plan, I could perceive perhaps car parking in the swales, in the grassy swales
Okay.
under the trees. So, that's permitted, it is public area for car parking if you so desire. However, that would prohibit, real healthy growth of the trees and the landscape. It could damage the grass. So I just wanted to let you know that Public Works will allow you to plant the swale or put crushed stone gravel areas in the swale for small parking areas or drop-off areas. So you'll have to submit that on your landscape plan when you submit for permit.
Okay.
We encourage you to fully plant, especially under the trees, to keep cars away from the trees.
Sure. I can
Okay.
appreciate that. I know none of our projected needs would require the use of that, but maybe we'll think about whether it makes more sense to do it in a way that we avoid problems and allow the trees to grow healthily because
Correct. Right.
I'd rather it look pretty and do what we need to do to make sure that it does so that folks don't, because they see the opportunity, just park their car because people are people and we respect
Yeah.
that. We want them to go through the process we're going to lay out for them.
Sure, but I can foresee that happening in the future based on experience with other sites.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you will be responsible to maintain the landscape and grass in the swale. So if cars start parking on it, they're going to damage it. And that could be a code enforcement issue for you because you're not maintaining the swales.
And again, the school's been operating for 12 years and so you would have access to. I don't believe there's ever been an issue. So it's not a complete new proposal and this might be a problem in the future. The school's been there for 12 years. I don't believe we've ever had an issue or a code enforcement violation with respect to that. I'll double check myself, but we'll ensure that if that's the case, that we continue with that being the case.
Good morning. I'm Paul
Morning.
Rodas.
Is it still morning?
Still is for a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we must be running out of time. I don't have a clock.
No, we're fine. I'm Paul Rodas, city engineer
Okay.
and permit section manager over at Public Works. And just to keep on with what Dina's saying, there's a couple areas where the swale is getting beat up. So
Okay.
it's a good idea just for that. It's not necessarily part of the DRC, but for your clients there at the school, it's a good idea. Just so you know, for the swale permit, it's an alternative material out there. There's a covenant, so it's something that the school will have to maintain. But if they get into that issue, let them know that as they get into that, if there is an issue with it, they do have to maintain. There's a certain type of rock because you get too much, you get into a gravel. You get too fine, you get into.
Dust and dirt.
And so
Yep.
it's something that'll beautify, that'll help protect the trees and give them the alternative that they can actually park there a little bit, come in and out. But it is something that becomes a maintenance. Of
course.
But versus keeping sod, and it's also not something that they can completely just cover the whole swale.
Sure.
There'll be
sure.
limits. But it's an alternative that they can use. So now we're gonna get back into the DRC. We're gonna get back into the comments in there. I was looking at the areas for the scope of work, which is basically increasing the student body. The one thing I would suggest, there are other comments in here, but one thing as a permit section manager, on the intersection of Anastasia and Segovia Street,
Uh-huh.
I'd say a rebuild. And when I say rebuild, really I'm saying the pedestrian ramp over there on
Okay.
the southeast corner, I'd say head out the edge of it and put in detectable warning maps. We use Colonial Red
Okay.
and it lacks it.
So you're talking the northeast corner of the site?
Yeah, it's the northeast corner. And at that over there, at that corner there, the pedestrian ramp, it's the one you got over there that it doesn't have
Okay.
I'd say do it because there's the potential you're gonna have more foot traffic in the area.
Sure.
It connected to your site, that's really the one place you're lacking. I was looking, but I really don't know if you're going to have that many more students trying to go in other directions.
Okay.
But the way that your block is located, I don't want to start sending people and start saying, I want you to put an intersect, I don't want to put your crosswalk here, there.
Right.
There's a lot of other directions I don't want to start sending kids.
Correct.
This is where you have it right now. I don't want to go nuts with anything. Let's see what happens as you get into a traffic impact study.
Sure.
And if they start making suggestions, we'll take it from there with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I want to say, and the chairperson can probably, unless I made it up or it's a different project, but I don't think it is. I think we already got some feedback that the city wanted to see some improvements when it came to some of the pedestrian connectivity. So I think you all, will provide written comments and it'll be in your portal. We will sit with the architects and see where, I'll pinpoint this one corner you're mentioning, but anywhere else where we think, we obviously life safety is paramount. These are children, so we're going to do what it takes to make sure that they're safe getting to and from school.
Definitely. That's just one place that without even seeing a study, they say, okay, it's lacking and it's a minor thing. But that's just one thing to call out. When we see the traffic impact study, if it suggests that they want to see more mobility for pedestrians, that's where we'll have more discussions and we'll see what we incorporate. Now, solid waste had a good comment on this because the building was from the 1940s and some of the improvements made over time. They're saying, look, the garbage and recycle enclosure, it needs to be increased because in order to accommodate the additional students and staff, it should be increased to 22 feet wide by 11 feet deep. I did some quick measurements off of the site plan you got. It's currently almost 11 feet deep, 10.9, but it's only 13 feet and change wide instead of 22.
So this is the dumpster enclosure area?
Yeah, needs to be wider from 13.4 feet to 22. So make it wider.
So 13 to
It's like you
20,
can-
13 to 22, you said?
Mhm.
Okay.
From there.
Yeah.
So that's the recommendation from them so that you can fit in the right number dumpsters in there so that they can service properly for the increased amount of waste that they're seeing, waste and recycling.
Mhm.
That's their recommendation there. They do say install gate enclosures so the dumpsters are not visible to the public.
Right.
They'll come,
Right.
open it, they'll take care of business and close it again. Now, we have already covered it. Basically, a traffic impact study is required.
Mhm.
There's talk about the timing of it. You're aware of it. We want to address it with you as soon as possible. So please keep in touch with our transportation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That we can have the timing done right away as soon. It sounds like September is the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, typically you avoid the last couple weeks and the first couple weeks of the school year for all of the same reasons. You know, there's a lot of special activities. There's a lot of, you know, there's open houses and, you know, back to school events in the fall. There's
Basically-
end of year award ceremonies and graduations in the
Right.
spring technically, although it's 110 degrees outside. But so, you know, from a traffic engineering, the engineers have said to me before, you just don't, you know, no, it's not advisable. So we'll collect in September, but we'll work with your engineers will be doing the collection. So we'll obviously work with them.
Now, based on that plan, that study, now the traffic queuing plan and drop-off plan, modify it based on that. So the comment, as you see it in DRC, is going to say,
Right.
provide queuing plan, drop-off plan. Well, you do have one, but it's going to get modified most likely by.
Sure. And we welcome that. And
Okay. Now, this one's from Utilities Division. I mentioned in the previous DRC that Utilities Division is really now a skeleton crew and it's been taken over by other duties inside public.
Oh, okay.
Works. So realize this part is something you may want to talk about, but it's not as bad as you think. Your building was built in 1940. Given the number of students increasing, the sewer lateral, the connection the building has to the sewer system, probably pretty old.
Okay.
It may not be that bad, but we need
But-
to identify it. I would do this early on because sometimes you go through your project and at the end of it, we're saying.
So basically confirm sewer capacity or provide some.
Capacity is probably just fine. The line out in the streets, 8-inch for the school building, everything around there, you're not going to be. But what we're going to be saying is yeah, provide your numbers for it. But more than likely that old line, if it's 4-inch, up at the part that connects outside from the property line. now.
Sure.
And if it's a 6-inch, it's most likely clay. Let's replace it with a nice 6-inch PVC, put
Got
a
it.
clean out right on the property line so that when you call Public Works out for a clearing, we just go there and we don't mess with inside your property and we can take care of. These are minor things that if you have to do concrete work, you can replace a piece of sidewalk at the.
Yeah, no. And I think in light of like the kind of comment that the city architect made of, you know, an additional handicap space or whatever the case may be. I mean, I think it's an opportunity for us to go ahead and, you know, modernize to the extent that we can some of those elements that need modernizing after some time.
Yeah, that's given the scope that, like you say, you're not changing the building itself, but these are the small things that we can see that say that let's make sure your building
Right.
is able to meet now that you're going to be bringing it up and using it to closer to its capacity.
Sure.
All right, that's all I got for Public Works.
Thank you. We look
I
forward.
just want to clarify something really quick. So, oh, my battery's dying. They're not allowed to park in the right of way. So you can upgrade the right of way with landscape and such, but according to covenant, you're not allowed to park in the right of way.
Right. And that's why I said there's like 17 things on the resolution. I wasn't going to run through all of them.
Right.
I didn't know. So I said, I imagine you don't have an issue today because we don't do it. I also didn't know if she was referring to swales that were inside. I mean, sometimes there's areas inside the property. So, but we are seeking and will continue to abide by the additional conditions. We did not seek
Right.
material modifications to the resolution from 2012 in terms of the enrollment. Yes, that's one of the limitations, but there's things like you can't use the school. The school can only operate from like August to June. There's no, can be no activities past, I think it's 10 o'clock at night. There's a whole host of other things that we obviously intend to continue. Those stay there. We're modifying, but we're not deleting those, I guess, just to be clear.
That's fine.
Right.
This handyman didn't get the message.
Uh-oh. Well, he's not part of the school.
That's exactly, it doesn't, that's nothing on the.
Got it. Somebody who came.
Police.
Good afternoon, everyone. Major John Boblett, Special Enforcement Division. I checked with the officers that work the detail now. I noticed you mentioned the staggered times, which you currently have.
Right.
And what they relayed to me is that 3 PM is the time that you have your biggest backup.
Peak, whatever,
the
yeah.
Peak time. Part of the problem is that peak time, and again, not every day, but there are days that it backs up at Riviera. So if
Okay.
you're having cars back up on Riviera,
Sure.
when you're going from 260 to 700, obviously that's going to cause a greater backup, a bigger issue with traffic. So that's our major concern, obviously, traffic for the residents that live in the area. And as someone who's worked many schools over the years, parents, when they're coming to special events, they're gonna park wherever they can.
Of course. I did that yesterday.
It
At
happens.
my kid's award ceremony. I parked in a swale
Yeah.
in some school in West Dade. There, I said it on the record. I mean, what do you, like, am I not gonna attend? I mean, but those
You're
things
gonna attend,
happen 2 or 3 times a year. Like, I've been to that school twice, other than in a pickup and drop off context. So my point is that it's, things like that can happen, but they happen incredibly infrequently because there aren't that many activities.
But they do happen.
They do.
And part of the thing too is now you're going more than double the student
Sure.
enrollment. Parents that are going there to have teacher conferences,
Sure.
just to go pick the kids up early or whatever, you've reduced your parking spaces because you said you're increasing the staff. So now there's even less places for those people that are coming on a normal day, just for whatever reason. And where do they park?
So,
these
so
are
a
all-
couple answers to that. I'm glad you asked that question because that's actually a question we've looked at. So we set aside additional excess visitor parking for the school. The church has its office parking and visitor parking. The school also has visitor parking, meaning its teachers aren't going to park there, whatever. It's going to be open for that context that you're talking about of the parent-teacher conference scenario where somebody comes in during the day to meet. So there is an opportunity and a consideration. The second thing is we can certainly work with the school to make sure that the parent-teacher conference doesn't happen in a way where, they take up any space, like do it outside of the usual realm of the pickup and drop off in the heaviest time. It's like if you're going to have a parent-teacher conference, like on that day, you pick up your child later, you don't do it at the 3 o'clock peak. We can work with the school operationally. Their teachers can be told, listen, these are the windows that you have so that we avoid that. The last point I'll make is the last 4 parent-teacher conferences or 5 that I've had, how do you think they've occurred?
You're gonna tell me Zoom, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is and I don't like it. I'd rather go see someone in person, but the reality is that there's just less and less of that occurring on a regular basis. If there's an issue or a problem, there tends to be first at least an effort at Zoom. So, but I mean, your points are well taken, but we do set aside parking for that. And we operationally can work with this school to make sure that they don't do it during the peak times.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is that this increase is going to affect traffic. It's going to affect the backup, especially a pickup on Riviera, which causes an issue not only for the residents, but law enforcement and everybody else that's got to deal with driving in that area.
Sure.
Has there ever been any thought of not increasing the number that much? I mean, because again, you're not talking about, adding 100 students, you're more than doubling.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And that's gonna have a great impact on just like, and I know you say there's only a few events a year. But like I said, I've worked many schools and there's always an event. There's always somebody's holiday, somebody's special award ceremony. And each class sometimes can have their own thing, which is gonna cause people to come and park wherever they can park.
I got it.
It is an issue and it's gonna cause a issue for traffic in that area.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I didn't mean to suggest that there were only 2 events a year or anything like that. I'm a parent of 3 kids. I know there are events. I'm fully aware of that. In terms of the number question, we work with traffic engineers. We believe we can accommodate this. But if during that process, iteratively with the city and the city's traffic engineers, there is a determination and you all will have an input that it doesn't work, then that number may come down. But, I mean, we believe it works at this point based on the analysis we've done and the space we have. When the traffic study's done, that will be a big instruction as to whether it works at 700 or some other number. And so I'd say stay tuned to whether that number morphs. Okay,
Then all I can say is for the record right now, after speaking to the officers that work the school, after speaking with staff, we can't support going to a 700 number. It's just gonna affect traffic.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Fire, any comments?
No comments from fire.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you have any questions for us, as you know, this is a.
I was looking to see if there was someone else.
No. This is not an administrative approval. This goes to commission. For
course.
final. So once we, I guess, have our comments online, you can address those. I think we may have to have another meeting regarding the actual traffic study to get input for all staff at that point in the fall, I guess, when that's completed. But this would require recommendation from planning and zoning board as well as from the commission for approval.
Okay, yeah, of course, we'll be in touch and someone, I think Public Works, suggested we get in touch with you much sooner than the fall in terms of the traffic. Absolutely. I mean, we're going to be in touch, here in the next couple of weeks and continue the conversation to have that engineer in place and have everybody ready to go so they can collect in September. I'm not going to pick up the phone in September to call you because then it'll be October. Like,
Right.
we don't want to delay unnecessarily. So, but we'll be in touch. And again, I'll close on it. I mean, I'll chat with Mr. Gibbs now, see a couple of folks that are left there and say hello to them, and we'll continue the discussions, or we'll have discussions with them. And certainly by the next time that you all see us or the planning and zoning board sees us, we will have had, I am sure, many discussions with the neighbors.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
We're adjourned. Thank you.